Coming up on We Talk News this week, could the wait for safe banking be over? It's now safer banking, and there could be a vote in the Senate next week. Colombia Care, a giant MSO in the U.S., is now the Cannabist Company. Financial services app Square teams up with a cannabis company, Jane Technologies, in Canada. And a bipartisan U.S. House committee eases the path for federal employee hopefuls who've used cannabis in the past. Speaking of bipartisan, who do you think enjoys weed more, Republicans or Democrats? The answer might surprise you.
One more exciting thing, the brand new brand that is coming to Missouri, one that I personally am so excited for, is Tequila. That's right, Method Man's brand is coming to Missouri.
All that and Coast to Coast Cannabis Reports on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome to We Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. This is Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast and around the world. We've got an update on the Safe Banking Bill that's been renamed the Safer Banking Bill, a brand name change for an MSO, and if you won the Emerald Cup for growing in California, guess who might be coming to personally congratulate you? Woody Harrelson. So first, we start in Washington, D.C., where federal reform continues to move at a snail's pace, or cannabis standard time, like one step forward, two steps backward. But all signs from our nation's capital are pointing toward the U.S. Senate voting on opening the banks to the cannabis industry and getting rid of the prejudicial 280E tax clause. The Safe Banking Act that the U.S. House passed 7 times over the past 5 years is now the Safer Banking Act, and a committee markup is scheduled for September 27th. It would be the first step in moving forward toward a full vote. We turn now to our state-by-state reports. We start in Ohio, where voters will have the right to pass an adult use legalization law that will be on the ballot in November. The Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol is a citizen initiative that allows for regulations, home grow, manufacturing, commercial growing, and a 10% tax. If Ohio citizens pass it, and there is some indication that it will become law. Last week, we reported that there are still some Republicans in the Senate who want to add amendments to that voter-approved law if it passes. But our man in Ohio is Attorney Harry Bernstein, who is worried about a precedent of legislatures changing the public's will.
It's a direct attack on democracy, period. They can call it what they want. So now today, it's interesting. Something came across a story today, and I think it was, I don't want to quote the source if I don't know, which isn't very, but effectively it said that there's enough Republicans now that if the law did pass here, which we expect in November, that they would not override it. Now, that doesn't mean they're gonna not amend it. So any law can be amended. Now, what they're talking about is messing with home grow rules, but I think what's going to do is going to give them cover to make a cash grab.
In New York, the battle for a fair and just cannabis market continues in court, but now New York farmers may have an even more challenging issue slowing down production and distribution. It's mold. And our New York correspondent, Pam Schmiel, has more on its implications for the new market.
I'm Pam Schmiel with the New York Cannabis Report for We Talk News. It seems that New York's cannabis industry now has a serious mold problem. New York mandated that cultivators grow outdoors, not indoors, to encourage sustainability. But a recent investigation led by the editor of the New York Cannabis Insider newspaper exposed random testing results of top-selling weed strains available at New York's licensed dispensaries. The report claims the test results show microbial levels 10 to 250 times higher than what is allowed under the state's laws. The newspaper also reports that New York labs are misreporting test results to hush the problem. And what's most alarming is state regulators are taking a hands-off approach and leaving it up to the farmers to decide if their products are safe for the public. And at a recent public meeting held by the Office of Cannabis Management, it was an emotional outcry where a farmer wore a noose around his neck and claimed he is about to hang himself because of the botched rollout of the New York cannabis industry. And there is a public uproar because the Office of Cannabis Management removed the farmer's comments along with others from a public video of the meeting. And that's one example of the drama unfolding at these meetings. I'm Pam Schmiel with the New York Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
In New York City this week, a 3-day innovation seminar for the industry hosted by Fast Company. Our New Jersey reporter Jill Goldsberry was there and got to talk with Al Harrington, the former NBA star who is a cannabis advocate.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Jill here with Pro Cannabis Media. I'm here at the Fast Company Innovation Festival, and we are here at the very first Cannabis Equity panel. And who's going to be on that panel? ArcView, Viola Brands, and the Office of Cannabis Management are expected to appear today on the panel. This is the second of 3 days of the Innovation Festival put on by Fast Company, a media company from New York. And there are seminars, panel discussions, networking, and quite a few speakers. Some of them you may even know. On this panel of all-stars, we are looking at Gene Sullivan from ArcView, Damien Fajon from the Office of Cannabis Management, and former NBA basketball player and cannabis advocate Al Harrington, who has his Viola brand based in Colorado. And he continues to preach the responsible use of this plant medicine.
We need to just continue to see progress, within the industry from legislative all around, right? Medical is obviously very, very important because I think a lot of people envision, cannabis being a prescription kind of product, right? Which, I think, as they continue to do all the testing and start understanding all the cannabinoids that are in the plant, that, there will be some that will be for, some very serious medical issues. But there's also still like the everyday users and the people that just want to use because it allows them to relax, calm down.
I'm Jill from Pro Cannabis Media, New Jersey.
Another state that may hold the record for the speed of opening their medicinal market is Oklahoma. There are over 2,000 medical dispensaries operating in that state, and now 5 of them are being shut down for violations. A routine inspection in Ponca City of 19 dispensaries found that 5 of them have been selling legacy market cannabis that is untested. So they have shut them down and confiscated the illegal weed. In total, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority confiscated over 4,500 pounds and over 14,000 illegally grown total plants. Trulieve, a multi-state operator that dominates the Florida market, is suing 2 former employees and 5 Arizona state vendors for racketeering and kickbacks. Karen Black is our Arizona correspondent and has more.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. As a dominant MSO in Florida, Trulieve has tried to expand to different markets while shutting down operations in Massachusetts and California. Those changes can wreak havoc on investors setting up lawsuits in different states. Now here in Arizona, Trulieve is fighting back by exposing 2 former employees who had allegedly created kickback schemes with 5 vendors. The company claims 2 workers began selling valuable shelf space to Your Way, Nature's Wonder, and Healing Resources at its 21 Arizona dispensaries 3 years ago and raked in over $1 million. According to the lawsuit, Trulieve believes the civil conspiracy may have included even more brands. There are more worker woes in the Grand Canyon state. Employees at Curaleaf's Midtown Phoenix store went on strike September 16th to protest the firing of an employee for his union activity. Representatives from the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 90, the American Federation of Labor, and dispensary workers all called on Curaleaf to reinstate the employee in the day-long peaceful protest of what they are calling unfair labor practices. Now for some good news. Sonoran Roots is growing in more ways than one. Inc. magazine recently ranked the Tempe-based craft cultivator the number 10 fastest growing company in the United States. The vertically integrated operator recorded 3-year revenue growth of nearly 25,000% between 2019 and 2022. Sonoran Roots was also the highest ranked Arizona company on the list of 5,000 and the top ranked business in the health products category. That's this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
Our dynamic duo of international correspondents are back this week. Lex Pelger covers a European market for us, and Debbie Facey is in Canada.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. In Malta, the first 2 licenses have finally been granted to cannabis associations to allow them to start building growing facilities. Over 2.5 years since the law was first introduced, the process has been plagued by delays in issuing regulations that saw the first head of the Oversight Committee fired. Prime Minister Robert Abella has said that he was frustrated by delays and was pushing for things to move faster. After new rules were spelled out in January, these 2 licenses now allow for construction, but not yet for the actual growing. That operating permit will come after a final inspection. In a surprise announcement in Italy, the Ministry of Health declared CBD oil to be a narcotic only prescribable by a doctor. The Ministry of Health reversed their earlier decree in 2020 that allowed it as a medicinal product and which led to a flowering of hemp CBD shops across the country. But this announcement continues a crackdown by the Meloni administration, which included police raids at a recent International Hemp Expo. The Italian hemp industry has already begun a strong pushback against the decree. Finally, 2 updates from the French-speaking areas of Europe. In Belgium, the Deputy Prime Minister has declared she supports cannabis legalization. She stated that we must end the hypocrisy because other crimes have a far greater negative impact on societal life. But in France, insiders are unsure whether the government will even include any funds for medical cannabis in next year's budget. Currently, there's a very small pilot program, but even that might wither if the funds disappear. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations reporting for Weed Talk News.
This is your Canadian correspondent, Debbie Facey, with Weed Talk News with the Canadian Trade of the Week. What we have this week in the news is since BZAM and the Organic Dutchman merged, BZAM has now saved a whopping $20 million due to their monetization and their declining of associates and facilities that they no longer have to pay. Next we have in Canada is the number of registered licensed medical patients. Since the legalization in 2018, the number has declined 38%, and that was up to, that is up to the data date of the first 6 months of 2023. As of right now, we don't really have the data, or I should say the reasoning why, but hopefully we do, and I'm able to share that all with you. And last but not least, we had Hall of Flowers, the 2nd annual trade show here in Toronto, Ontario, which not only brings the brands, the retailers, and the LPs together, but this year they also allowed some of the budtenders as well. This was a great way to not only build relationships with some of the brands and LPs, but to also create partnerships as well when it came to the retailers, LPs, and the brands. This is Debbie Facey, your correspondent for Weed Talk News with the Canadian Trade of the Week. Peace.
Now let's take a look at some of the major stories involving the publicly traded cannabis companies. One of the biggest is Colombia Care. You might remember that Colombia Care and Cresco Labs had been talking about a merger for months. But at the 11th hour, that deal fell apart. Now, Colombia Care is rebranding their parent company as the Cannabist, one of the original vertically integrated MSOs. The Cannabist has over 170 dispensary licenses and will operate in 16 markets all over the US. Their official legal name now is the Cannabist Company Holdings and will begin trading on the Canadian market under the acronym of CBST. Our public sector analyst is Doug Miller, so let's see what he has to say about it and what reaction stocks have seen since the safer banking bill moves forward in Washington, D.C.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. As you are aware, Colombia Care is rebranding itself as the Cannabist Company. I have a Cannabist not far from me, and it is one of the better dispensaries in our area in New Jersey. Anyway, the day before they announced the rebranding, the Cannabis Company announced they had raised $25 million via a private placement. The company will be trading under a new stock ticker, but it was trading around $1.22, and it is dipping a little, as most cannabis stocks are at the moment. I had mentioned that the news of the rescheduling made all the cannabis stocks pop, and they all ran to the top, and now they're just pulling back a little bit. But I am watching for that safer banking bill to move forward, and we will see these cannabis stocks pop again. And that's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
Limits on the amount of THC allowed by law differs from state to state, and many consumers still believe the higher percentage of THC is an indicator of a more potent strain. It is not. Terpenes dictate the power and general effect of each strain, but since everyone has a different tolerance and endocannabinoid system, limiting the percentage of THC in each plant is really not something lawmakers should be concerned with. That debate is now happening in the state of Vermont. The medical green nurse up there is Jessie Lynn Dolan, so here's her Vermont Cannabis Report, sponsored by Canatrol.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board made a public service announcement in response to an incorrect news article published in the Green Mountain Vermont Cannabis News about the higher calling music and camping event last weekend. With much dismay, public consumption is still illegal under state law, and there are no events that allow cannabis. The Cannabis Control Board's monthly meeting will be on September 27th to approve licensing and give timely updates on programmatic changes. Recently, they compiled a non-exhaustive list of some of the plastic-free cannabis packaging options, as anyone currently having an exemption and approval to use plastic no longer has that option. On September 28th, the Medical Programs Study Committee will meet for the second of 4 meetings to help develop a report that will be sent to policymakers for the upcoming legislative session, recommended needing changes in the program. Commissioner Pepper requested the Vermont Cannabis Nurses to educate the medical society and community on the free nurse hotline services they provide as an example of needed reform to support patients. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
We've got breaking news for weed lovers everywhere, and specifically for the superstars of the cannabis world, the growers. 2 meat and cheese experts in Vermont have revolutionized the dry and curing process of harvesting flower. Remember, this is a living plant, and part of the process, once you harvest the plant, you have to invert it and dry it so all those magical cannabinoids can reach their maximum potency in the buds of this flower. Now back to Vermont and Canatrol. That's where David and Jane Sandelman have been curing and drying meats and cheeses for years. Now they're applying their years of experience to the cannabis space, and they are blowing up the market.
So we turned the whole thing upside down. We created the perfect environment. You put the flower in, and then it dries to the perfect moisture content, and now it's curing. You don't have to move it out of the space. You don't have to guess when it's ready or not. And it just comes out amazing, sticky bud. And we said, will this work for cannabis? So we built a small unit which is now our home unit.
When did you do this?
The small unit, probably about 3 years ago, was the first prototype, and we gave it to a grower, and he said, "This is the most amazing flower I've ever produced."
If you want to find out more about Canatrol and this revolutionary process for drying and curing so you get the most out of your plant harvest, contact them at info@canatrols.com.
In Florida, the push for adult use legalization of cannabis continues, and it will be on the ballot in November. However, there's a new initiative on the behalf of the over 800,000 medical patients in the Sunshine State. They want to be able to grow their own cannabis in their homes or on their property. Many states do have homegrown written into their legal regulations, but it's still an issue in New Jersey and now in Florida. Once again, another signature initiative is underway that will allow medicinal patients to grow their own medicine. Many other legal states limit the amount of plants grown to 6 per adult per dwelling, and this right to grow your own medicine never ends, whether cannabis possession is legal or not. Best case of that recently is in Oregon. That's where Marianne Corsagi files her report.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. As reported here several weeks ago, a group of Oregon cannabis growers sued the state over the restrictive aspergillus testing rules. The rules allowed 0 aspergillus and was a pass-fail test. Since aspergillus is ubiquitous in the environment and there have been no cases that aspergillus has sickened any Oregonian due to cannabis, a judge issued a stay of the testing requirements. This week, the OLCC finally released guidance for any products that have failed aspergillus testing and is adjusting the status and metric and allowing the sale and transfer of these products. The Oregon Health Authority has scheduled a Rules Advisory Committee on October 11 to review new proposed rules for aspergillus testing. And finally, enforcement continues for illegal grows in Southern Oregon. During July and August, 14 warrants were issued and over 24,000 plants were seized and destroyed. That'll do it for the Oregon Report this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
Here in Massachusetts, there is all sorts of chaos going on with the Cannabis Control Commission. Last week, the commissioner, Shannon O'Brien, was suspended by the state treasurer, Deborah Goldberg, and we are still trying to find out why. So now, marketing billboards are the target of the state house. And Jimmy Young has more in his Bay State Cannabis Report, sponsored by CNA Stores.
I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by CNA Stores of Amesbury and Haverhill. Chaos, confusion, and crisis all describe what's been going on with the Cannabis Control Commission in the Bay State. Last week, State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg suspended the head of the commission, Shannon O'Brien. A week later, after that suspension, there's no official announcement on why this happened or how long the suspension will be. O'Brien did have a 50% ownership of an outdoor grow in the state and later was allowed to continue at her post, but no one knows if this had anything to do with it. Chaos, confusion, and crisis. The CCC is no longer known as the Cannabis Control Commission. Now, of course it is, but let's face it, those 3 words describe what's been going on. Now, this week, the state legislature in Massachusetts started to talk about putting together an oversight committee to review and monitor what's going on with that CCC. One more issue that has come before the state legislature is an effort to ban the billboards for the cannabis industry. Anyone who travels on the Mass Pike knows that there are quite a few along that highway, and we'll have an opinion piece on that next week. Meanwhile, former Commissioner Shalene Title, one of the more popular of the original group of commissioners, will be the keynote speaker Saturday, September 23rd in Boxborough at the High Lifestyle Show. It's the 2nd annual event celebrating the social consumption of cannabis. And of course, this is a great music and entertainment event, and it was scheduled to be outdoors, but the organizer, Gary Sommers, tells us, obviously with the rain, it's going to be indoors. So come on down if you are over 21. And don't forget, BYOC.
Last year we were outdoors, we had wind, we had rain. This year with hurricanes and everything else, there's no reason to be able to sustain an outdoor model at this point. So we moved everything into the big giant exhibit hall, and we're going to have between the exhibit hall and the courtyard almost 30,000 square feet of space for social consumption. So I'm encouraging everybody to come in to the party. Live music all day on Saturday and Sunday. Friday, we open at 3:00 in the afternoon with Grateful Dub doing 2.5 hours of Grateful Dead reggae, and in the exhibit hall with the vendors.
No word if Gary extended an invite to any of the current commissioners who might want to attend, just to take notes on how a social consumption event can be peaceful, fun, educational, and engaging. That's the Bay State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by CNA Stores. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young. The Massachusetts Cannabis Report on Weed Talk News is sponsored by CNA Stores, with 2 locations of their veteran-owned and family-operated dispensaries in Amesbury and Haverhill, dedicated to the community north of Boston, providing consumers with the widest selection of products in the state.
In the show me state of Missouri, it seems every month they set a new sales record, but this time a decline in sales for the first time in a long time. And state regulators are getting defensive about how they handled that massive product recall. Brandon Jones has a Missouri report brought to you by Baker Brands.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by my friends at Baker Brands. And yes, Alaina, we have seen a little bit of a dip in sales, but we did have a whole lot of products taken off the shelf. It's kind of hard to sell something if there's nothing on the shelf. And yeah, we did have a little bit of a weird thing of how all the products were taken back, why they were taken, the time frame, and just what the actual regulations that they violated were. So a lot of my friends that had a lot of the licenses were just wondering, exactly what did they violate and how can they make sure they don't do it again in the future. But on a very high note, we do have some great events coming up here in September. This Saturday, I'm actually getting to host the Canna Games at Smoky River, headlined by Paul Wall. Coming out here at Smoky River, we can actually have cannabis, food trucks, the whole thing, and it's at Riverbend here in Kansas City. And then they have another event the 13th. And one more exciting thing, I'm sneaking away to grab something fun. One more exciting thing, a brand new brand that is coming to Missouri, one that I personally am so excited for, is Tequila. That's right. Method Man's brand is coming to Missouri. Look for it soon. So again, I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Everybody stay educated and medicated, and I will.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
In Texas, cannabis is still illegal, but hemp is king. Now, a hemp company is in trouble with the Securities Exchange Commission. A Texas manufacturer of hemp CBD inhales allegedly attempted to scam investors out of millions of dollars over a 3-year period from April 2020 to May 2023. Rapid Therapeutic Science Laboratories and its founder, Donald Schmidt, also allegedly committed securities fraud. There's always something going on in the cannabis industry in California, and this time a new labeling regulation has the industry in an uproar. Here's our California reporter, Levana Vassa, with that story.
I'm Levana Vassa from the Bay Sesh, reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. With Croptober approaching fast, the plants are looking like pineapple trees and smelling like heaven up in the sun-grown mecca of Humboldt County. This week, celebrity stoner and activist Woody Harrelson returned to pay homage to the Emerald Triangle and to visit some of the world's most famous cannabis farms. One of them was Huckleberry Hill Farms, a family-owned farm whose Whitethorn Rosé, bred by the owner, John Casale's mother, has been making waves for several years across cannabis competitions. I asked John about Woody's visit, and he said this: as more and more people experience the best cannabis in the world, we will see a huge inflow of superstars gravitating towards our way of life. Ridgeline Farms was another stop for Woody. The family farm, owned by second-gen farmer Jason Gelman, has dominated competitions in previous years with their son grown once and now Lance, among many others. I asked Jason about the visit, and he had this to say: Woody was very impressed with how special this place is, even more how different we as a farming community respect the plant. He loved when I said it's not just a job, it's our way of life. Work times are pretty tough in the Emerald Triangle, and right now is as important as ever to get the Humboldt and all of the Emerald Triangle's names out there. When an icon like Woody stops in and admires our craft, it helps all the craft farmers. Woody also stopped by Cafe Feast Humboldt, Canada County Farms, and Emerald Spirit Botanicals. That's this week's California Cannabis Report. I'm Lavana Vassa from PCM reporting for We Talk News.
And finally tonight, there is a new survey on the cannabis consumption habits of the two political parties in the U.S., Democrats or Republicans. Well, it all depends on the data collected by the Brightfield Group. The survey was conducted by the U.S. Cannabis Consumer Insights Group, who asked over 5,000 current consumers in legal states what was their political affiliation plus their consumption habits. Of those consumers, 39% identified as Democrats, 20% Republicans, and 27% independent. Here are some of the results. 48% of those polled shared that they consume multiple times a day. When you look at just the Republicans, that number goes up to 54%. Not sure what these results mean, other than the users of both parties might want to contact their representatives to get that banking bill passed. The industry needs it, and so do the consumers. And that's Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Alaina Pinto for Weed Talk News. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. See you next time.
I'm marketing these, and yes, I'm pitching to you.
That's Steve Levine, the inventor and principal behind the One Hit Wonder. And this little efficient device is getting rave reviews.
And there's more uses than just a one-hit wonder.
The One Hit Wonder, you get a 50 milligram hit.
So if you used a one-hitter or dug out before, you know the challenges. Steve's One Hit Wonder is easy to clean, use, and enjoy.
Standard one-hitters do not work. We're afraid to inhale. The One Hit Wonder has a built-in ash catcher. So inhale like it's your last breath. Suck the ash right through.
Get it at onehitwonder.com.